Hey, what's up guys, Anfield here. Welcome back to another Ranger guide. Now it's about time that I do one of these. It's been a while and I was not sure when I was going to do this one because I kind of wanted to wait for the Black Spirit Rage changes that are on Korea. But we still don't have those changes. I'm kind of tired of waiting. I do get asked frequently. I'm sure you guys are tired of waiting as well. So I'm going to make this guide. It expands upon everything I talked about in the temp guide with a few sort of updates and stuff. Now that guide was never meant to be a serious guide for a long time. Because I expected class changes, because Perlibus said there would be after they did the massive changes to the classes in the spring. But we're now in October, there hasn't really been any changes, certainly none really of note. And so as a result, obviously I need to talk about the current state of Ranger, which is the same as it was before, but make an actually more detailed guide. So this guide's going to go over PvP combos and other things about PvP that you can take into consideration, as well as some just general talks about the state of Ranger and things like that, so you guys sort of know where you're at if you're playing Ranger, what you have to sort of look for, especially when you get better gear and other things like that. So I'll try to keep the guide as concise as possible, but it's, you know, a topic I do enjoy talking about because I like BDO like many of you, and I like Ranger like many of you that will be watching this guide. So let's get into it. So Will of the Wind is still your most powerful skill. That's absolute Will of the Wind. You can see that I use Vine Knot and Wailing Wind just for buffs as attack speed and crit. Now you can see how powerful Will of the Wind is. This is a very geared warrior. So yeah, it's very, very powerful. So in order to demonstrate an actual extension of the combo, because obviously it's important that you know how to maintain the CC chain as long as possible, you'll see that I have to take gear off just to do that. So Will of the Wind, and then Regeneration, 59 flow skill to add down smash. Now I think it's a 50% chance it'll apply. There are a couple other ways to down smash: Charging Wind, Penetrating Wind are other ways. You can also use Blasting Gust like here to reapply the knockdown phase. So that's another way you can do it. So there's a couple ways you can do it, and if you're quick, you can actually if you fail one down smash or a knockdown, you can try again with a different skill. It just depends what you have cooldown. That's Heavenly Knot, just another way to get into the bow form. It's a flow. Heavenly Knot, I don't know that it's that useful. This is an Awakened combo, so it's a lot to talk about in just this little clip that you can see there. But this is the same Awakened combo again. I'll put it up here, and this is with my full AP on. So you can see there, here using Vine Knot to refloat the target, so that's a different kind of CC. Vine Knot's really reliable when it comes to floats, but it can fail. That is the level 56 Rabam Tearing Shot. It applies a long-range stun. It gives you time to walk up to the target, so you can buy yourself time, and then you can use, say, Blasting Gust or maybe a grab to actually knock the target on the floor. So really useful. This is just showing how much bow can do to someone's block. This is obviously a very geared warrior against my bow damage. With the full AP on, it, you know, breaks the block pretty fast. And because you can break the block fast, you can wait for the block to break to throw out a CC like that. So yeah, if a target is not iframing around to recover their block or other things like that, and you're applying the damage consistently, the block will break, and you can then apply extra damage like that. So yeah, that's just showing Penetrating Wind. So Penetrating Wind I usually use from the flow from Razor Wind or Tearing Arrow. And basically Penetrating Wind is one of your more powerful bow skills other than Shotgun, Blasting Gust, or Will of the Wind. Penetrating Wind is a ranged bow skill. Really, you use it to apply ranged damage against blocks instead of just using Shotgun or Blasting Gust. Well, you wouldn't use Blasting Gust that much. You use Shotgun quite a lot. But Penetrating Wind is a really nice skill, so I'll demonstrate how to use that. Seol has a really nice guide on Penetrating Wind, but overall I think you used to be able to do a little bit more with it, like there's a kick cancel, but the problem is now that's been nerfed, so the damage of Penetrating Wind has been nerfed on cooldown. So now I think really only Kiss of the Wind, the flow is actually useful, not Sharp Feather so much anymore. But it is useful to know how to do it, and I would use it as soon as it's on, or excuse me, off of cooldown, so that you can actually do quite a lot of damage. You'll probably also see the Blasting Gust, especially if used before Penetrating Wind, has similar cooldown. This allows you to use Blasting Gust first to hopefully apply a knockdown, and then if you do apply the knockdown, you can also down smash the target with Penetrating Wind as well as a lot of damage to the target. But even if you don't down smash with Penetrating Wind, you have a second chance again with with Charging Wind. Now, use Charging Wind after Penetrating Wind because basically it applies the skill that precedes Shotgun, because obviously Shotgun is Extreme Charging Wind, so this is a very powerful combo. So just to show you a little bit of protection, walking backwards with your Awakening applies an S block, but it's easily broken against really high AP, so you need to be careful how much you use it. You can do things like grapple out of it and stuff like that, but you need to be wary of how low you let the actual block get, but it does give you some openings. It's useful against blocking against long-range damage or long-range CCs in particular. It's best use of it there. Your bow doesn't have that kind of feature, so you need to be careful when you're in your bow. When you are in your bow, it's very easy for someone to CC you and then gap close you very, very quickly, so be careful how much you use the bow. Elven Range is a frontal guard into super armor skill. It's very slow to activate that frontal guard, but because it locks you in animation, you can't cancel it. It's very easy for targets to gap close, so be careful how close you are to your target before you decide to use Elven Rage, because it'll punish you. Nature's Tremble is a frontal guard, and you don't have to always use it for pure damage. But the way to basically make it, because otherwise it locks you in animation, and you can't change the direction with the camera, you have to use mouse movement, so you can sort of see it demonstrated there. It's kind of hard to use it that way, but it is a potential way to use it. Evasive Explosive Shot is a protected iframe skill that also throws out a stiffen, so if the target like that is not in protected animation, use it. You not only iframe yourself, but stiffen. That's the only skill Ranger has that uses that, and it has a 14-second cooldown, but Evasive Explosive Shot is very useful for that. You can also actually use it twice. It keeps its iframe. The Ranger 100% is actually quite powerful. You can see there with not that much gear on, it still does quite a lot of damage. It constantly throws out CCs, and at the very end it actually knocks the target down if they're vulnerable, and keeps you in super armor throughout the whole animation. So in a lot of 1v1 situations it's incredibly useful to have that, but for large scale I would mostly absorb. There are a few circumstances where it's useful though. So just to be clear, Breezy Blade is your most spammable super armor, and Rushing Wind pairs out of that. The two skills kind of go hand in hand. Rushing Wind much longer cooldown though. Evasive Explosive Shot is a full iframe. You can use it twice actually to be iframed, which can be useful to get away from a target. I would only use it once if you're pretty sure you're going to stun the target, or stiffen rather I should say. Your dash is a iframe when it's not cooling down, like you can see there. Very useful to utilize your dash. It's very underutilized by a lot of people, but it's a very useful tool, not just for mobility. So yeah, make sure you use that when you can. And you should also try to learn how to control some of your skills a little bit more fully. You can see here with mouse movement. It's a little advanced, but ultimately if you can practice with it, it's going to help you a lot. Even myself, I need more practice using it. But basically it allows you to control a skill that would normally be frontal guard, like Nature's Tremble, and change the direction of it. But it's also useful to change the direction purely for damage, not just for the protection, but you can see there being demonstrated. Elven Range is another skill that could benefit from you changing the direction. Call from Sky is one of my old favorite skills. Unfortunately, they changed it from iframe to super armor. It's not totally useless, but it's largely much worse than it was before. You can be grabbed out of it. You take full damage while in it. You can right mouse button in midair and iframe though. So, you know, that's only when Evasive Explosive Shot is off of cooldown, of course. Otherwise, yeah. So it costs you 250 stamina to use it. It's very expensive, but it's there to be used if you need it. So do use it, but just pick and choose and be careful about being grabbed. So for some closing remarks, I'll just basically talk about the state of Ranger, how I personally feel that the class is. In many respects, compared to the previous state of Ranger in, spring of 2018, Ranger now is much more like playing a diet version of the class. You use much less of the kit than you used to, and you have to be much more inventive with what you do have. So it's very difficult in certain circumstances to actually make the class effective, but in others it's still fine. In 1v1s, for example, Ranger doesn't actually need that much gear and is still very, very viable. It has a lot of tools still to use in 1v1. The backwards walking block, it's just a lot of... I would say it's much less dynamic than it used to be, much more one-dimensional. But this is okay. I mean, at least you are capable of doing things. The only classes that are really going to give you a real hard time are Mystic to some degree, which is a class that gives everyone a hard time, but you can still do enough to Mystic. You can kill Mystics, especially if you have a lot of AP on the bow. But even without that, you can still deal with Mystics. You just need to make sure you land those grapples. But really, Ninja and Sork are the two classes that Ranger just basically can't deal with if those classes, or the players playing those classes, are remotely competent. So those are the two classes I would watch out for as a Ranger. Very, very difficult to get out and beat those classes. But everything else, 1v1, you're mostly okay. You don't need that much gear. However, in large-scale PvP, it's kind of the opposite. Ranger is quite poor at lower gear scores. You don't really do that much. You have some long-range CCs you can try to use to help your allies, some a little bit of support damage, but because the ranged attacks are still split, the split damage basically removes a lot of the potential damage you might have had, even with full absolute skills, at low bow AP. However, the good news is that if you do get to a much higher gear score with much more bow AP, the better the bow AP, the better your performance will be. The class is very, very lethal, actually, in large-scale PvP, and sort of catapults itself from a very poor class to a very, very good class. It still requires a lot of very good positioning because, of course, a Ranger pressured is a dead Ranger, especially in large-scale fights where the FPS is much less. It's very hard to control your character, and there's damage coming from every direction. So if you are pressured in a large-scale scenario, it's, yeah, rip. But if you're able to position yourself cleverly, there's quite a lot of damage you can do as a supporting role behind the front line. So there is some hope there. Nevertheless, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found some of this helpful to you. Mostly I just wanted to talk about the combos and what you should do. A little bit of talk about the CCs and how to protect yourself as well. And I hope that that was helpful to some of you at the very least. But if you have any questions, feel free, of course, to leave them in the comment section. I'll come by and answer as many as I can. Or you can just come by my stream, the Ranger Discord. There's lots of good sources of information out there. And hopefully I won't have to remake a guide so soon. Every time I make a guide, they seem to change the class, or although perhaps in this case that might be a good thing for once, although we are getting the Archer soon, so I don't see the current Ranger being buffed, but we'll wait and see. But yes, thank you so much for watching the guide, guys, and I'll catch you later.